Chris Stevens, and this is the Psychology to Live By podcast. Welcome to Psychology to Live By. My guest today is Stephen Puri. By way of short intro, Stephen is a rare breed, having been a senior executive for 2 motion picture studios and also having raised over $20 million in venture capital. He began as a newscaster and interviewer.
Ooh.
Is that right? Yes.
Yeah, that is right. Back in the day, few people researched that. Yeah,
he's also a software engineer and has created computer-generated visual effects for 14 movies. Mm-hmm. Very notably, he produced the digital effects for Independence Day, which won the Oscar for visual effects. Mm-hmm. In addition, he founded 3 startups, and as he says, with 1 successful exit and 2 failures.
True, and you learn more from the failures.
But the focus of our conversation today is quite different. Stephen is the founder and CEO of the Sukha company, a focus app that puts together all the tools necessary to enter into a flow state and have healthy, productive workdays. And Sukha is a Sanskrit word that means happiness from self-fulfillment, or a type of inner ease or peacefulness. So our discussion today will focus on the psychology of flow. We'll examine how high productivity can be healthy, how we can nurture creativity and inspiration, and especially how to do this in remote working. And we'll discover how his app is designed to help us do just that. So it's a very timely discussion in a world characterised by constant, deliberately engineered distraction. One effect of our digitally mediated lives is a widespread acedia, a kind of vague restlessness and dissatisfaction with our lives. As Cal Newport in his book Deep Work describes it, we're much too often splashing around in the shallows of our work instead of immersing ourselves in the deep work that in the end produces deep meaning and authentic life satisfaction. So, Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Doctor, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much for that. And for those listening at home, I hope this is one of the more entertaining or engaging episodes that is also actionable. So let's try and create something great.
We'll try to do that. And but I think we might start. I'm just curious about, given your, extensive and impressive work history,
widely varied. Go on, yes.
Yeah, widely varied. Why the pivot to Sukha? What was behind that?
Okay, a wonderful question. And to answer it, let me give you the wind up into that, the backstory of that, right? And for those who are, listening at home or playing along in the car, as Chris mentioned, the thing that may be interesting about this episode, and probably different than others, is I'm one of the few people who has been a senior executive at a couple of motion picture studios and worked in what's considered a very creative field that is also technical, but considered creative, and also worked in a very technical field that is somewhat creative, and been around a lot of high-performing individuals, and seen over time the ones that are sustainably high-performing and the ones that burn out and at 35 want to move to a commune and never talk to anyone ever again. So my background is my parents were both engineers at IBM. My mom was a software engineer, a coder. My dad was a hardware engineer, a chip designer. So when I was little, as it happens, if your parents are both ice skaters, you probably learned to ice skate when you were little, right? I knew how to code. So when I went, and you're right, I did a TV show in DC. When I went to the University of Southern California in LA, I was not actually in the cinema TV school, even though it has one of the best cinema TV schools. And I know you guys have AFTRS down there and Swinburne and some great, film schools. Yeah. But, in the United States, Caesar Great School, I actually wasn't studying that. But I was a Watson Scholar from IBM, which meant that I had a job at IBM guaranteed if I ever wanted it. So I worked at IBM as a junior software engineer making money for school while I was in school. First big break and how I got into the film was I was in LA when film went digital, when computers became powerful enough to manipulate film. So with sound, you had, Pro Tools. With editing, you had nonlinear systems like Avid. With, computer graphics generating entire images of film, you had Silicon Graphics making these amazing computers. And I was there when there was a demand for people who could speak engineer, which I could, and had a creative bent, which I did have. So my career took off, and that's how I did all those films, doing the digital effects and titles and things like that. That led me to want to actually make films. So I worked my way up the studio ladder, as you know, at DreamWorks, vice president at Fox, running like Die Hard and Wolverine and stuff like that. And then reached a point where I was like, I don't know that working on the Die Hard sequel and the Wolverine prequel and the remake and the this, and it was actually going to be a great place when I'm 40 or 50 years old. Like, I can't wait to get out of bed and make the Wolverine, Die Hard, Alien versus Predator mashup sequel, prequel, remake,
Yeah.
And that's when I thought there's only one other thing I knew how to do, which was engineering. So how do I solve problems that have an engineering solution, And I had sold a company in my 20s with the director and producer of Independence Day. We had set up a company after we won, the Academy Award for the visual effects in the movie, and sold it 4 years later to Das Werk in Germany. So I was 28. I had my first exit, made a bunch of money, and thought, as one thinks in their 20s that you're smarter than you are, more successful than you are, better looking than you are, funnier than you are, later life teaches you not true. But at that time, I thought, oh, great. So I did 2 small startups, raised about 3 million for each. And both of them got to a place where Series A was out of reach. We didn't have enough monthly active users to raise the next round. And those were very painful. But in the course of doing that, and here's the final answer to your question.
Yeah.
Looked back at things that I had learned. And a buddy of mine was very into like mindful productivity. And I learned about flow states, realized I'd experienced a flow state. And it was kind of a magical way of working that I wish I'd known back in my 20s. And then, of course, you do the research. You are very familiar with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and all that. We can talk about that in a moment if you like. And said, this feels like a really great thing to do to make this more available to people. And that led me to Sukha.
Yeah. Okay. And were you engaged in sort of a yoga and Sanskrit related activities? Like, is that also a part of it?
You've done your research. I love this. So I met my wife because she was the girl on the mat to my left in yoga in Manhattan. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So yoga has been a daily part of our life for over 10 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And the funny thing is, so when we got married, we had a working version of what would become the Sukha app. Yeah. And we had a working title. We're polishing it. And I was going on my honeymoon with Laura, because when you do a lot of yoga, you go to Bali for your honeymoon, right? Go do yoga on the beach and hang out for a couple of weeks. So I was complaining to her on the flight. I was like, I've come up with every bad name for this flow state app. Like, you don't even want to know, distraction blocker 19 and flow 4, and there's terrible stuff. And I said, maybe he'd come up with a name that was like Amazon. It's not called like bookstore. It's not a descriptive name. It's just an interesting, powerful, memorable name. Like Nike, Winged Goddess of Victory. What a cool name for a shoe company, I was like, what is something that really expresses deeply what we're doing? And Laura said, maybe when we get to Bali, for 2 weeks, no one's going to bug you. Your unconscious mind will come up with something. And when we landed, I said to her, I think what would seed my unconscious is, do you mind if I speak to a couple of our members? And just ask them, like, what do they love about this thing? And she's like, yeah, go for it. I'm going to go to the pool. So I talked to 3 people. The third guy I was Zooming with, I said, we're coming to the end of our 10 minutes. I'd asked him, what's your favorite feature? Do you love the music or the smart assistant or the timers or whatever? And he looked at me, he said, Stephen, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, okay, guy that I do not know that well, what was the right question? And he said, you should ask me why I pay you. And I was like, it's like $10 US. It's like $10 a month. I don't think it's that much. We make it. I don't collect a salary for this. I do this because I love it. Tony, my partner, doesn't collect a salary. We just love it. And I was like, okay, but I'll take the bait. So why do you pay me? He said, since I started using your little beta site, I have two kinds of days. At 3 o'clock, I'm playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I'm kind of down on myself. Like, where did the day go? I was busy. I'll get up early tomorrow to try and finish. He said, so I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a way better answer than what I was asking for. Thank you. I told this to Laura at dinner. She's like, he's more articulate than you are, about your own company. And she's the one who named the company that night. She said, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms, prana, your life force, and your karma and your dharma. And she said, he described sukha, that feeling when you're in your lane doing what you're meant to do, you can do it with ease. You're like ahead of your day. And that was how we named it the Sukha Company. That was it. So Sanskrit is both a part of my son's name. It's my company's name. It's a big deal.
Okay. And that's a really nice lead in to, we should be telling the listeners what the Sukha app is and what it's for. So in my intro, I think, I indicated there is a widespread problem of acedia, and it's very much like that user of yours described, the 6 o'clock day where people
have you had that?
Off. I've had it so many times,
Me too.
And you have this very long to-do list, and you're busy all day, and about 5 of those things have been ticked off, and you start to wonder, what the fuck have I been doing with my time today, right?
I completely agree. Yes.
So I'm assuming that's the real focus for your company and for this app. Is that right?
Okay. I respect the fact that you know what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it just because I know there's a cohort of your listeners that are flow state masters and they're floating on clouds doing brilliant work.
Maybe.
And there's probably another cohort that's like, I've heard about this. It's in the zeitgeist, but what exactly is this flow state stuff? So let me just set the table for 30 seconds, which is, you and I acknowledge there was a Hungarian American psychologist. He died about 3 years ago, I think. Mm-hmm. And his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he had a thesis. He said, you talk to high performers in very different disciplines, athletes or inventors or whatever. He's like, when you talk to them about the concentrated states where they do the thing that makes them famous, where they change the world around them, they describe it in very similar ways. Isn't that weird? What's up with that? So he did the research. At the end of it, he wrote the book Flow, the seminal work on this. It's why we call it a flow state. And he said, I chose this word because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found, which is we're all on the river paddling to move ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it magnifies your efforts. It carries you. He said, that's what these high performers have figured out how to do. So the answer to your question is, I think back on how hard I worked, how many days I had, like what you said, where at the end of the day, I'm like, oh man, like, how did this get away from me? And my to-do list is still intimidating. And Laura and I have to go to a dinner. Maybe I'll work after dinner some more. It was just a terrible thing to be like, hey, let's not make this a long dinner because I got to get back and finish stuff. It's miserable to tell your partner. And that was really the impetus for, how do we dig into the conditions to allow a flow state to happen and make it simple, right?
Yeah. And in preparation for our conversation today, I came across, I think each year Microsoft does a big study. They basically aggregate all the data of their users across their, Excel and Word and PowerPoint, etc., and Teams and Outlook. And they called this year's report the chaos of the infinite workday.
Very apt for this year.
Yeah, and because I just pulled out some of the stats here. So, the average worker in America receives 117 emails a day. They have 153 Teams messages. 57% of the meetings they're called to are ad hoc, i.e., not in their calendar. And the average time for interruptions by meeting, email, or message during core work hours is 2 minutes.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because you've had a career that has spanned, many different kinds of work, intellectual work and research and education. So when you think about the distractions or the detractors to your ability to do great work, what are they for you, or what have they historically been?
It's really interesting, and I think that there's a few candidates. If you're in a physical workplace, other people.
Sure. Yes.
Obviously, mobile phones, email, these technical intrusions, and these days, of course, that's greatly amplified by social media. And systems that are engineered to garner our attention, to pull on our sort of dopamine driven curiosities. But there's also internal stuff. I think in some ways the greatest distractor of us is us.
Yeah. This is where it gets deep. Keep going, doctor.
Yeah. And we become... I remember the early research on alleged multitasking.
Right.
And, obviously I say alleged because when it's closely examined, that's not what the brain is doing. It's rapidly switching between tasks. But
I hope everyone heard what you just said, because some people still believe multitasking is a thing, and it is a brain trying to monotask and then burning energy context switching in between monotasking. It's really, you just said it very calmly.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me hang a lantern on what you just said.
Thank you for that. And just on that too, we know that when people attempt to multitask, they're really burning a lot of energy. It's very stressful. It undermines the quality of both tasks, and it actually takes longer.
Right.
So, right.
But you remember when multitasking was celebrated, you're so productive, you multitask.
Yeah, and just to be clear for people, we can multitask on things that don't require cognitive load, right? So you can have music going in the background and do brain surgery, but it's when we're trying to do two things that have some sort of cognitive demand, that's where we hit the trouble, because our prefrontal cortex can only contain a certain amount of complexity before it's overloaded. So, but what happens? One of the findings is that when people attempt to multitask a lot, they actually get worse at multitasking. I mean, it sounds strange. It's the only example I can think of where if you practice something, you get worse at it. And so what they're getting at is that you're actually training your brain and your whole motivational system, your endocrine system, to be looking for distraction. So I think that's the other big feeder into this, is that we become highly distractible.
Yeah, it is very true. Yes.
Yeah.
And as smart people have said, and happily you and I stand on the shoulders of giants. A lot of smart people have done a lot of research on this, but we live in a world where the $1 trillion companies exist to steal our lives. So they put a lot of money paying the smartest engineers
and psychologists and people from the gambling industry.
Exactly. On this, to say, how could you eke another second out of Chris's day? Yeah. Because if you can do it for Chris, we can multiply that by 1 billion people, and that's a lot of money. And it is a great paycheck in Silicon Valley to go and just steal people's lives.
It's how do you monetize people's attention? And so I'm very interested in this, obviously, as a psychologist, because the quality of our life experience is determined by what we pay attention to, right? Mm-hmm. So and other people are making the decisions for us about what our life is really, in that sense of what we're paying attention to. Mm-hmm. So when I looked at your app, and we should let the listeners understand what we're talking about.
Sure, yeah.
But when I looked at your app, I thought really this entire app is about attention.
That is true.
Giving people some control again over what they're paying attention to. So now I've put that little golf ball up on a tee. Would you like to tee off on that?
That is very generous of you. Yes. What I spend my days doing right now is working to perfect the recipe for people to do something great with their lives. And the way in which that is expressed is we made a website that has the pieces you need to get into a flow state. It gives you 1,000+ hours of scientifically designed flow music, including nature sounds too, because some people we learned really work well to rain or work well to the sound of surf, not to music, right? So we offer that. We offer pink noise, brown noise, binaural beats. There's a smart assistant to keep you off websites. You can say, hey, the websites that bother me are these. We give you a free Chrome extension. Oh, man, just keep me off Etsy. Keep me off NFL.com or whatever, ESPN.com.
Yeah.
And when you open one of them, your smart assistant just talks to you like an adult, not like some of these. There's some great blockers that just like treat you like a child. We don't. All that happens is if I open Amazon, which I did actually yesterday while I was working, very naughty, all I get is a little pop-up and a voice that says, hey, is Amazon helping you? And it just gives me that moment to go, who do I want to be? Do I want to be 3 o'clock guy playing with my, 9-week-old downstairs? Or do I want to be 6 o'clock guy grumbling, where did the day go? And sometimes that's all you need if you're an adult.
Yeah.
So,
and if I can just add there, when you opened Amazon or when you click on whatever it is, very often we are unaware that we're doing it. Like it's so automatic.
It's muscle memory.
Yeah. And it's a kind of, and so often it's enough before we're too absorbed in it. Your pop-up is going to be just enough to go, oh, now I can decide where my attention is.
Thank you for looking at that. Yeah, it's the same thing with your phone. You brought that up. Oh my God. Can I tell you the audiences, especially live audiences where you can poll people in the audience, what's the biggest distraction, right?
Yeah.
Phone, number one, every single time I ask.
Yeah.
It is a beautifully designed, every vibration, sound, pixel of color has been perfected to say, I can suck your attention away from what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
We did the simplest thing. When you open Sukha, before you start work, you hit play, the music begins, your little Pomodoro timer starts, the distraction blocker starts, a QR code pops up. You can tap with your phone, put your phone down. You pick up your phone. The smart assistant says, hey, I see on your phone. Is that helping you? And that's it.
Yeah.
Just treats like an adult. It's like if you were sitting next to me and you're like, Steven, hey, I know you want to go downstairs and play with Satish. Like, is right now being on your phone getting you there? And I'd be like, no, thanks, Chris. You're right. That is not. That's the way we look at it.
It just reminds me, when I did my PhD, it was on the psychology of creative insight, and the empirical part was interviewing fiction writers.
Oh, wow.
And so there were novelists and playwrights and poets, and a novelist I interviewed her in a university in a tutorial room. These are the classic university rooms with bookshelves down both sides,
right.
A sort of view of chairs, and a desk. Right?
Yeah.
And this woman was sitting there, and I walked into this. It was at the University of Sydney, into this tutorial room. There wasn't a single book on the bookshelves.
Really?
Yeah. And on her desk, and this was pre, the really computers and internet and so on.
Mm-hmm.
On the desk, there was paper and a pen and an alarm clock.
Really?
And I kind of walked in, and we introduced ourselves, and I said, so I've got to ask. I said, why no books? Why? A glass of water, alarm clock. And she says, if I have books in here, they will distract me. I'll use anything to be distracted from having to draft. And she said, I said, the alarm clock? She says, I set the alarm clock. So this is like the Pomodoro technique, right? And I'm not allowed to leave the room until the alarm clock goes. And I had another writer who...
I love she's that self-aware. This is how I work.
Yeah. And another writer, I asked it, well, because I asked them all, how do you organize
Mm-hmm.
for your work? And another writer said, well, I have the two bookends of my day, which is a lovely metaphor for a writer.
Right.
And the two bookends of a day was dropping her daughter to school and picking her up.
Okay.
And it was between those things that she just had to do all the work then.
Yeah.
Right. So this gentle reminder, this system of reminding us of what's most important,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in a polite, because sometimes you're going to pick up the phone because you really need to pick up the phone, right?
Sure, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of the time, let's be honest, you didn't need to pick up the phone. Right?
No.
It's not always an ambulance calling with, your loved ones.
So you've got this. I presume that's sort of AI driven. Is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. These days, what's not AI? My breakfast cereal is AI driven, right?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's AI driven. That's the worry. So, what else? What else have you got in the app? How else do you
It's
help
really
people?
simple. So you hit play.
Yeah.
We're a big fan of Pomodoros. And by that, I mean, there was a technique, which, Francesco Trullo said, hey, if you sort of work for 25 and take a 5-minute break and repeat that cycle and take a long break, it's kind of cool. We allow it to be adaptable. Like I personally,
just for the audience, they go, "What the hell is pomodoro?" But it's an Italian word. It means tomato, doesn't it?
yeah. Tomato. This guy just said, listen, I use a kitchen timer that's shaped like a tomato. And he said, I set it for 25 minutes, I work, and then I set it for 5 minutes, I take a break. And he said, it's a good cadence for me just to stay fresh and keep working. And so
it's tolerable to the mind.
Yeah.
Like if you say to yourself, I'm going to work for 3 hours,
hard.
It's not going to work. But most people can do 20 minutes, can do 25.
Yep.
And they say, I'm just going to really focus for that time and then I'm going to have a break. Is that right?
Exactly right. So that is the heart of what we do is you hit play, your timer starts.
Yeah.
You can choose a playlist. As I mentioned, there are lo-fi, binaural beats, sounds of nature, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So you create an oral environment around you.
Yeah.
It supports you. You can enter your task and you'll see this helps you to monotask. You see your task with a little progress bar. So if you say, hey, I need to do XYZ, it should take me 45 minutes. You can see as those 45 minutes elapse, a little green bar go across.
Mm-hmm.
It approaches the end, it turns yellow to be like, hey, you should be wrapping up. And when you go over, it goes red, right? And your little smart assistant will nudge you, be like, you're almost at time for your task. Are you wrapping up?
Yeah.
Or, you're halfway through. Are you wrapping up? So it's things like that are helpful.
So it's a form of like what we call deadline magic, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that the human beings work well when they know there is a finite time and there's somebody watching, right? Yep. So that this is like very deep in our social psychology, but it's done very, very gently here. So just to summarize so far, so we've got some systems built in where the system can note when you're distracted and will say, do you really want to be on the phone or do you really want to be looking at the Amazon app? You have music that's tailored for that person that they find relaxing and helps them get absorbed. And you have a sort of task manager that in real time is tracking your progress on what you've said you want to achieve. And so it brings in this notion of deadlines.
And also the notion of focus. If I can add to that, I'll tell you something that we did that was maybe around how my brain is wired, which is I found that I was working and I had a task list that was visible. Let's say there were 17 things I needed to get done.
Yeah.
Seeing the 17 things was both paralyzing for me because you're like, oh my God, there's so many things to do, as well as I would find myself, again, the bad word, multitasking. Where I'd be like, oh, let me quickly send that email. Oh, I could pay that bill. Oh, I could write a couple paragraphs of that blog, as opposed to doing the right thing, which is let me start on something, monotask and finish it. We experimented by, when you start your session, hiding everything but your top 3 priorities.
Yeah.
It helped me. And then the data on our membership is that I noticed members were 77% more probable to finish all 3 when they could only see 3 than before. With that long list, they would finish fewer things. I was like, oh, okay. So it's a little subtle thing, but it really helped me.
Yeah. And in my intro, I mentioned that wonderful book called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
By Cal Newport, amazing book.
And he talks about how people are splashing around in the shallows too much and they're not getting the most important things done. And look, there is a long history of this in the literature. And the most famous book on this is probably Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he talked about 4 quadrants, quadrant 2 being the stuff that's important but not yet urgent, to say that we ought to be doing this, the most important things first and get them done.
Related to the Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah. So, I mean, but what I'm interested in here is that you have a live system that's kind of talking to you and keeping you honest,
You know what it is, Chris? It's that I realized I could have like 5 different apps running. Oh, let me have a timer. And then I'll have my Spotify running or Brain FM or Endel, which are great, and a task manager running. And then I also want to get some feedback on how I'm doing. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but we give you a live productivity graph where you can see as you're distracted or you're in focus, and you can have all these different things running. And I said, in the morning, all I want to think about is open Sukha, press play, get to work. That's it. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant
how we package it together.
And it fits in so beautifully. And obviously this was conscious on your part. In Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on creativity and on flow, one of the really, I mean, there's several things perhaps that are important for the listener. One is you don't really enter flow unless you've got a high level of skill or expertise married to a high level of challenge. All right.
Yes.
So you don't really enter.
Yeah,
you don't really enter flow, sealing envelopes, like 100 envelopes. But
yes.
And the mind, can feel a bit overwhelmed, a bit paralyzed by too many big things, right? But if you have a high level of expertise, you need to take all other distractions away. So a mountain climber, they have high level of expertise, and is a very high level of challenge when they're clinging into a rock face. They cannot afford to have other things, the things in the shallows or other concerns interrupting, because it might be the last error they make. And
you went dark. Okay, yes, that's very true.
I did, but it gives that sense in which we need to focus the mind on a few things that are important, and doing that live, I think, is really critical, because unconsciously we drift away, or we think, oh, that feels a bit hard, I'll do this. And so this brings up the question of procrastination. Yeah, do you want to just talk about that?
So this to be vulnerable and talk about my own frailties, fallibilities. I noticed that I would be like, Chris, tomorrow at 9 I need to work on my blog, whatever, right? And then actually tomorrow at 9:15 I would still be checking emails, or at 9:30 I'd be catching up on the news to make sure it's on top of things for the day, something which is really procrastination. And the effect of that, the pain of that, was not felt at 9:30 in the morning, because then the whole day is fresh. The pain is felt at the end of the day when it's like, oh man, how did this day get away from me? And I hated that feeling, right?
Yeah.
So, you do the why thing. Why wasn't I working at 9? Oh, because I was doing this. Well, why was I doing that? And here's what it was for me. Those procrastinations, which is what they are, let's call them that, they were really born of paralysis.
Yeah.
I think I was talking about looking at a task list of X number of things and saying, not all this can get done today. Where do I even begin? Or something on there was really not a task. It was like a goal. It's like, write my book. I'm not going to write the book between now and the noon podcast with Chris. You know what I mean? Like, it's intimidating. And so what we did is we built the Smart Assistant. Will look at your task list with you and break things down into little 30-minute chunks. Like, you could get this done. Outline chapter 3, Stephen. You will win on that to-do item if you make it that. You will lose if it is write your book. right?
Yes. Yes.
And things like that become very helpful in this regard. And that's really what I wanted. I wanted to make like getting into work and getting into the flow a much more accessible, like fun thing to do. And there's also a community aspect of just other people who are doing something meaningful. That I love. It's probably my favorite part.
We may get to that, but just wanted to highlight a couple of things there. And Csikszentmihalyi talked about the importance of the immediacy of feedback, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if your goal is to write the book, you're not going to get immediate feedback. But if the goal is to
Yes.
write this little subsection of this chapter, then when it's done, you get that feedback, all right? And then you're also providing live feedback. And this activates a reward system, a neuronal, a brain and hormonal systems that, dopamine is released and,
Correct.
And so it's reinforcing in the old parlance, right? So, and this is what builds the momentum that begins to lead to flow. But the other thing is that he spoke very much about was it needs to be something worthwhile to you to push you past the procrastination.
I love
right?
that you're a student of the original text and the research on this, because you're right.
Yeah.
Flow states, which just for those listening, are often characterized by you lose track of time. You're not staring at the clock.
Yeah.
You do your best work in a compressed amount of time.
Yeah.
You and feel uplifted at the end as opposed to depleted.
Yeah.
You know? Distractions fall away. Like there are a number of wonderful components of being in flow. But as you said, there are some conditions that have to be true. You have to believe what you're doing is meaningful. You think if you're filing TPS reports, you may not be in flow, my friend.
No.
You have to have skills that apply. You have to be challenged at this thing where you have skills that apply.
Yeah.
There are a number of
you've got to have you've got to have immediate feedback, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight this because this is I think a very important part of your app, and that is about the relationship between well-being and this way of working, right? So flow states are fantastic for people, and one of the things they do is they switch off a major constellation of circuits in the brain called the default mode network, and also tend to switch off parts of the prefrontal cortex. Now, what does all this stuff mean? It means that the default mode network is basically an internal focus about self, or it's largely rumination and self-concern. This is the opposite of what a flow state is. Flow states are where we forget self. Like you say, we even forget the passage of time.
Yeah.
And it appears that this external focus on the task, on the world, is exceptionally good for us. Because it stops.
We all need more of that now.
Yeah, and I think self-concern, self-consciousness, self-monitoring is a huge part of procrastination, a huge part of not being productive when we're working. It creates it colonizes the brain's resources, and we have less to bring to bear, right?
Well, do you remember the first time you looked up and you'd been in a flow state and you were like, what was that? Do you remember that moment?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was it?
Do you mean what was I actually doing? Or
what was that? I remember for me, the first time I was like, what just happened? I remember that so clear, like it was yesterday. I'm curious, what was it for you?
I've had, I suppose, a couple of experiences. I don't normally talk about this, but hey, you asked.
I did.
Of what might be called mystical experiences.
Ooh.
But they were identifiably had characteristics of flow states, right? And it was this dropping away of self-consciousness, complete immersion, a sort of wonderment, a sense of overarching beauty. But it had all of those aspects of flow, right? So I wasn't working in these examples, and you can enter flow. It doesn't have to be at work, right? But I think the thing that they all have in common is this liberation from self-concern and self-worry.
Mhm.
And that naturally leads to a state of happiness or sukha, right? Because now there's nothing to worry about. If we're not worried about self, there is nothing to worry about, right?
I appreciate you saying that. This is why when I came up with the tagline for our company, it is not about productivity. It's not about work faster, work harder, get more done.
Yeah, no.
You simply feel great today.
Yeah. Like, what's it all for? I often say to people, I mean, I spent a whole career talking to very highly productive people who are very unhappy,
Right.
right? And they've completely lost connection with why they're doing this. Like, but it's not hard. I mean, you ask anyone, you ask a few questions in a row, everyone's just trying to be happy,
Right.
right?
That's ultimately what we want.
Yeah. However you define happiness, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's
The
variations
goal
in
is
that.
not being productive. The goal is getting to happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way I think about it, like, kids know how to do it, and then they both develop out of it and are trained out of it. But you watch a kid, work is play, and play is work, right? And somehow we've forgotten that. And so that's another frame I was thinking about when I was looking at your app. You know, it brings back a certain playfulness for people.
I appreciate you seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the other thing there is about taking breaks and this being a healthy. Do you want to just talk about that, and then we might talk about the community thing?
Yeah. So something that we thought was important in creating this is that if you do take a break, we want to encourage you to do something healthy. So as soon as your little, the yoga bell rings and your session is on break,
Yeah,
we give you a modal that has a couple options. Oh, do you want to do a breathing exercise at your desk for 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you want to sit there and just breathe deeply?
yeah,
Do you want to stretch, which is for me a really big one? Because if I don't do yoga in the morning and I just start working, I need a desk stretch.
Yeah.
So you get points if you go for a walk or you get a glass of water.
Yeah.
A friend has actually contributed a short meditation, like a liminal sort of moment.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of including that as an option on the break.
Yeah. And couple of thoughts here. I mean, I'm extremely lucky. I largely work from home. Oh, we've got to talk about working from home too. I've got a double block in the subtropics. I've got huge gardens, vegetables, greenhouse.
Amazing.
So what I do is I work to that mental tiredness, and then I'll probably do about 20 walks around my garden each day.
I love that.
Just for a few minutes, or to pull a few weeds, or just go out and have a look.
How do you feel afterwards?
Better, right?
Refreshed, right?
And see, our brain it's organic material. Like, when it works hard, and it works very hard when we're using high cognitive loads, right? It's only about 2 or 3% of the body mass, but uses somewhere between 50 and 20% of the blood's oxygen when we're working hard with our brain, we really are. But it also
the glucose too,
and sugars, but it also creates waste products. And they need to be removed and excreted. So these little rest periods are actually crucial for our efficiency, apart from anything else, right? So I think this is really smart, right? This is strategic self-management.
I wish 1 million people listened to your pod, because this is gold. This is really, really important if you want to have a healthy, path to being productive, to being happy.
But people feel guilty about doing it.
Right? And it's the opposite. It is, you should feel bad if you don't make the time to keep yourself fresh.
Yeah. And this is a whole other podcast, really, to talk about the traps that people get into about self-sacrifice and working hard and being good enough and perfectionism and so on.
Absolutely, yes.
But we'll just tag that and set that aside.
We'll put that on the shelf for now.
Yeah. Because I wanted to talk to you about those other two things. You mentioned there's a community aspect to this, so I'm curious about that.
And I didn't know if we should. I will tell you, the original version of Sukha was a single-player game. It was, you were in here, You press play, you get the music, everything's blocked, you can focus, your tasks being managed, you get feedback, right?
Yeah.
And I, as founder, talked to a lot of members, but it was like a hub and spoke. Like I knew all of these people, but they had no sense there was anyone else out there trying to do work.
Yeah.
And it hit me. What if there was the ability to sort of share what you're working on, ask other people what they're working on, cheer other people on?
Yeah.
I asked a couple members, as I love doing, hey, could I talk to you about this idea before we did something with it? And one woman I spoke to made up my mind. I described the story. I said, what if we went from a single player game like Pac-Man to like a multiplayer game where you had a sense of other people, and or would it be the most distracting thing ever and just destroy the platform? She listened to me politely, and she simply said this. She said, listen, Stephen, I can go to the Nike store. I can buy a pair of shoes. They'll sell me left shoe, right shoe. I put them on my feet. I run. It works. There's a reason why 100 million people belong to the Nike Run Club, because you run further and you run faster and you hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And she said, I think you should do it. And it is my favorite thing in the morning. Before I hit play in my own app, I love clicking on the group chat, just seeing who did what session, and you can post things you're working on. People can ask you, like, I finished my blog post today. Oh, really? Post a URL to it, and people read. Like that sense of having a community, people are all trying to do something. It is my favorite thing.
And again, another podcast is talking about a deeply and inescapably social nature and construction. But perhaps a segue there then to, especially considering that, to the more and more common workplace is home, remote working.
And you might be at home right now also.
I just might be, yeah. And,
I don't see any fluorescent lights above you.
For me, COVID, I mean, it's obviously a dreadful thing. And apart from being the busiest I've ever been in my professional life, it opened up this possibility of me not having to fly in planes everywhere to go to work, right? That I do all my work remote. Now, it's not probably the challenge for me. It is for lots of people in that I'm quite introverted. I quite like this.
Okay.
I don't have a great need for. I have lots of interactions with people, but not everyone's like me, right? And not everyone's in my situation. How does the app help people who are remote workers?
Well, here's the thing. We wanted to give a path for people who just want to have the flow experience alone. If you never even open the little panel that has other people, it's hidden from you.
Yeah.
And that works. I mean, there's a good section of our membership that it's like they just want to hit play, have beautiful music while they work, and have this stuff blocked.
Yeah.
Have distractions blocked, right? However, for the people who do want to participate, it is something where a lot of us, and especially in our membership, we have writers, we have developers, engineers, and we have designers. Yeah. They're all knowledge workers. Many of them work from home or work remotely.
Yeah.
And right, there's a sense of unhappiness knowing that every day you may be in a different place. You may be in a coffee shop at home. You may be traveling, but you open Sukha and there are the same people there. It's like a global sort of community of people who are doing something. And we are social creatures. We may not need to be social, like you said about yourself. But ultimately, there's a sense of, I'd like to know that I'm part of some group of people doing something meaningful.
If I can add, like-minded people, like in the sense that there's a much higher probability that you're going to be on the same wavelength as these people because you've all landed in the same app for very similar reasons.
That is very true. And unlike some of the other apps where there is you go on Twitter and you see people just hating on each other. You go on to Reddit, you see people telling each other that I'm smarter than you are. And there's a reason why you go on Twitter and scream at people. It's like a hate box, soapbox for hate. Yeah. With us, you're right. We aggregate people who are trying to do something. Hey, I'm trying to write a great blog post, write my novel. And we had a guy, you may know this, in the spring, this guy Roy King posted in the group chat that he finished his dissertation, and other people were like, "Hey, man, that's kind of a big one. You just sort of mic dropped there." And he said, "Okay, yeah." He said, "I'm actually an assistant vice principal at a high school in Missouri, in the center of the United States." He said, "I'm also a dad and a husband. I've been using Sukha for 60 to 90 minutes at night because I'm working on my PhD in engineering. And it allows me to have that really small window, super productive."
Yeah.
And he said, "But don't get too excited because I still have to, defend my dissertation. I have to go in front of the, better than I.
Yeah.
I have to go defend my dissertation. That's for like 2 weeks from Monday or something."
Big thing.
And really nice. That weekend leading into that Monday, a number of people in the group chat that I know, I run the thing. I know they don't know him. They're in Japan. They're in South America. They're wherever. Posted, "Hey, Roy, good luck Monday. We're pulling for you. You got this, buddy." It was kind of cool to see people coming together to cheer each other on as opposed to trying to tear each other down. And when he didn't post on Monday, people were worried. They're like, "Okay, like what happened?" And Tuesday morning, he logged in and he posted, "You may now call me Dr. King."
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
People went nuts. And like that, I'm proud to be part of a community that holds each other up.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I saw, like you say, it's not just about, I hate the word hack, right? It's one of my pet hates, because, most of the really significant things for people are just like a one-off hack. You can't speed up everything, right? There are some things that actually, And so what I saw in your approach here is it's actually very sensitive. Well, obviously Sukha, it's very sensitive to people's humanity. To their, it's got well-being at the very center of it, and it's as you say, it's lifting people up, right? And so it doesn't surprise me. At first, I was like you. I thought, why is this community stuff here? Isn't this about me sitting at my desk? But that's why. But then
go on.
You have answered that question very eloquently. In fact, you have answered all my questions very eloquently. And I'm conscious of.
I am very fortunate in my life that I'm doing something that is aligned with my values, and it makes me a super happy dude.
Yeah, I know. And look, to be honest, we were talking about psychology to live by, and how that I will do this when I fully retire. I'll probably do a lot more of it. And obviously the only reason that I would be doing that is similar to your reason for doing what you're doing. I think it speaks deeply to a very deep human need to, as one philosopher puts it, to matter.
Right.
And I think what you're doing does matter.
Thank you.
It contributes. And, in a world where I think we need more and more oases of people contributing to each other rather than, as you said, tearing each other down.
Nice metaphor. Yeah.
So thank you so much for making time.
May I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Because you were very gracious on this podcast to really have deeply looked at what I'm doing with my life now and understanding what the goal is to help people feel better, to do the great thing that they're capable of, right? But I'll tell you this, I know with live speaking engagements, when I'm flown places to speak, when I do podcasts so frequently, the appeal is you have all these great Hollywood stories. Let's talk about Die Hard. Let's talk about Wolverine or Transformers or Independence Day or Star Trek or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that was not what this was about.
Yeah. No,
I really appreciate that. There's some great stories there for very high performers doing stuff, which we could talk about sometime. Yeah. But I appreciate that it was not just, hey, how do we mine Stephen for stories on fun film anecdotes? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get more clicks or whatever. So
I will give you more clicks. If you ever want that episode, I will give you an episode full of Hollywood stories. You got it.
So might take you up. If I get desperate, I might take you up on that. So
if you get desperate, maybe desperate, just call me. I mean, keep in mind the time difference. Watch when
No,
you
call. I mean for the failing numbers on my podcast. That's what I mean. So no, honestly, it was a fantastic conversation. How will people find what you do? How would you do?
Two things. Anything we've talked about where someone wants to know more about any of the pieces, they can email me. I'm very happy to supply information.
What's your email
Stephen,
address?
It's very easy. It's Stephen, Steven, at thesukha.co, which is THESUKHA.co for company. And if someone wants to try getting into flow state, we offer 3 days for free.
Yeah, nice.
Again, thesukha, THESUKHA.co. Try it. Jump in the group chat. Say, hey, I heard you on Dr. Stephen's podcast.
Fantastic. And look, we may well reconvene at another point in time, because I am mindful there were lots of things we pushed off to the side. But I'll have a bit of a crack, I think, at Sukha myself, and that might provide material for a second conversation somewhere later in the year. Okay. All right, matey. Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Psychology to Live By podcast. If you like the podcast and want to know more, my website is www.drchris.life. There you'll find links to my various social media posts, a newsletter, and lots more. And share the podcast with people you like, so they can like it too. And a little more cello and guitar from the wonderful duo Desire and Date.